My experience in development work tells me that, of course, it's good to do a stakeholder analysis when you enter, a certain area and intend to undertake a project there. You want to appreciate who is doing what, their interests, their influence, potential influence. And somehow we do that and we shelve it in development studies and only return to it when there is real need for it. And I'm not too sure how often that happens. But in this kind of work of security sector transformation, actually that's a very regular exercise. You can't afford to go for a whole 6 months without having to assess, review the stakeholder interests. This is why you have to constantly undertake some consultation and dialogue, find out what people are doing, the new interests, and what the political landscape, the context, brings onto the work of the stakeholders that are involved in SST, for instance. That has to be constantly reviewed to see how it feeds into our work. I think it's an expanded set of stakeholders. And I must characterize them as being highly sensitive. And one cannot fully engage with them without understanding what ethos instruct or guides their work, what principles, their mandate and everything. Which is why you'll find in ZPSP we have in our board a team of people who have experience and knowledge of the security sector itself, which then informs in a big way how we program, how we engage, and how we see the long-term vision and mission of the program. There is limited understanding of the real value of dialogue and consultation. And yet for us, this is a conflict-sensitive tool. This is a tool that actually, a strategy that actually sets the context for us to do research, for us to do training. The security sector has been, in a way, part of the conflict processes here.
That must have been the starting point, conflict resolution. How do we use this work in order to resolve conflict? But is the conflict perhaps dissipates or something like that, then it has to be about conflict or managing that conflict, because we are in a state of conflict, but how do we survive within it? This is what we are doing. That is what the PSP are doing. We cannot claim that because there is no physical war that is going on, then there is no conflict. Certainly, we do have divergent opinions and views, and there are so many reforms that we need that are not happening. So conflict is there, but the work of ZPSP is on trying to kind of manage that conflict with the hope of resolving it ultimately.
When we can look at the elections outcome and look at the numbers that all political parties have in terms of everyone who have voted in a particular election, and we look at the eligible voter, you would realize that in terms of numbers, political activists or parties or people who vote for them, they're actually minority. So we have a silent, uninformed majority citizens who have a role to play in terms of active participation towards ensuring that their communities are safe, that the security sector transformation happens at their level. But how that needs to happen is there is a need for a huge capacity to be strengthened, so that it does not become ZPSP, but it becomes everyone's responsibility. Because we have learned the hard way where if you focus things on personalities or on institutions, they can easily be targeted, or we can easily lose them, or they can just change their mind that they are no longer interested in that, which will be their right, But we need a model that empowers our citizens so that they take action wherever they are, where they see gaps. In terms of the political situation in Zimbabwe, it's very fluid, it's complex, but one thing that is common is that we have a system that understands a non-violent pressure, which should not be coming from any organization, but from the citizens. When we all begin to collectively own our roles and responsibilities around security sector transformation, every citizen have a responsibility and have a role wherever they are positioned. So if you so wake up and you say you're Zimbabwean, or you would say I love Zimbabwe and you reside in it, it's your responsibility to be an active citizen, where if you see any early warning signs or if you see anything happening, you need to take action at that particular point, not just pass by and see things not happening. So why I was also sharing earlier on to then say it's about us also measuring certain things. Because if we are not in an open armed conflict, it doesn't mean that we are not in conflict. Being a born free, who have served in different spaces, there were high contestations around human rights violations in Zimbabwe, for example. And people were very energetic and overzealous that SADC was going to deal with it, UN was going to deal with it, the global world was going to deal with it. And there was a very overarching lesson that I learned. Where is the evidence? You know, so that research component, that knowledge building, that facility that helps us gather the evidence will even convince the security sector leadership to know how bad things are. Because remember, the times that the service shifts were trained might not be an issue where if someone points a finger at me, I feel threatened. If someone says a certain word to me, I feel threatened. But we can't have tangible advocacy results of it until we have gathered evidence and the implications and clearly explain to them, to those that are the office or duty bearers of protecting this country.
I think the main challenge is there are many factors which are beyond the control of the Zimbabwe Peace and Security Network. Most of the factors are beyond their control, which have to do with that sector. Because the security sector is key to the succession issue, is key to so many issues, and because of that, some aspects of transformation may not happen in the next 5 years. They are more like 10, 15-year processes. They will not happen until the hierarchy of the army, of the police, of the intelligence, the hierarchy is former liberational veterans, but the rank and file are people that were born after independence. So it may take at least 5 years before we start seeing any results. So some of the methodologies have to take that into consideration, that there are political factors at play that may mean there may not be any political will for political sector transformation to happen in the next 5 years.